You can see obviously the combine behind, which I'll get onto, is why I'm sitting in a field with barley being harvested. We'll come on to. Welcome to episode 3 of The Build. I'll tell you what, sitting in a barley field in the sun in Yorkshire was never on my bingo card of life. I'm Chris, the founder of 3 Writings and Ellis Farm Distillery, and The Build is where you can get all the behind the scenes story and information and details about building England's next big single malt whiskey, 3 Writings. This week, building a whiskey, our biggest achievement was probably the moving on from the Evolution collection into the long-term experiment. So if you haven't seen the video, I spent the day decanting around 1,600 bottles of the Evolution collection that we decided not to sell any more of. We'll have 200 odd members of the Evolution Whiskey Club, and so decanted all those into a big IBC, which is where we can mix them all back together. So various between new make and 24-month-old that we had bottled up. Took that all out of bottle. It was very hard on hands, I have to say. And then we've now put it back into 4 casks, which we're then going to mature over time. You can see obviously the combine behind, which I'll get onto, is why I'm sitting in a field with barley being harvested. We'll come on to. But it's producing quite a bit of dust at the moment, so it's nice. What we're planning on doing with that is a long-term experiment in terms of a low ABV maturation, just to see what it can do with our liquid. And the team have come up with the name of the Lost Evolution, which I think is quite a cool name for when we release that. And obviously our Evolution collection members will get first dibs on that release when that happens in, be that 5 or 10 years time. But that should be quite something interesting. Biggest challenge this week, really nothing specific, just a sense of being really overwhelmed. I've been trying to do as much of this as possible, as much of the work around 3 Writings, getting the first release done, doing all this stuff for Chris Builds a Whiskey just by myself, and really try not to distract the Ellis Farm team away from their work on Dutch Barn. And it's just become, it's been a little bit hard this last week, really, just where basically I'm content creator, publisher, procurement, designer, logistics, coordination, scheduling, labourer, and more. Just a bit overwhelming this week. And the biggest surprise probably this week was I've been spending a lot of time thinking about the long term of where we go with 3 Writings. And part of that is I really like to see an evolution of the business into a dedicated 3 Writings whiskey distillery, and ideally in the centre of York. So had a positive meeting with someone in there in York about the options, and we're just going to explore that. So that was really, it was good to hear that basically they could recognise the potential of a high quality distillery, visitor attraction in the central part of York there. So that'd be really exciting to see where we go with that. Where are we overall? Look, the timeline remains a tough one to the 23rd of October, sorry. Next couple of weeks are absolutely critical because a lot of the little components, and I'll walk you through them next week in terms of where we are, from cork, label, decoration, glass, all those things are all on their own little parts where we're now coming to proofs and things that need signing off. So hopefully things will start arriving in the office. So if you like what you've been seeing on The Build and on the other Chris Builds a Whiskey content we're creating, obviously please like and subscribe both on YouTube and over on Instagram or TikTok. Look, and reflecting on this week, the main story, as I mentioned, sitting in a barley field in Yorkshire as we're harvesting some malting barley behind us. Came down here, so part of what we're doing with this is a Made in Yorkshire is the name that I'm going to run with for this in terms of the series. So we've got the build, we've got the release, which is all the stuff to do with the first release, and we've got the founder series, and then now we'll have Made in Yorkshire, where try and get involved and get out there in terms of all the parts it takes to go from barley all the way through into malts, into bria, into distilling, into whiskey, into maturation. It's going to try and do as much as we do in Yorkshire, get involved as much as possible. They include hopefully getting down there when the glass is being made, because that's being made in Yorkshire, and also our collector's box. But think about the sort of main story with this week. So on Wednesday, I turned 52. Happy birthday to me. I tell you what, when I was young, I had no idea that at 52 I would be sitting in a barley field in the sun in Yorkshire, talking to a camera, creating content for a thing called Chris Builds a Whiskey, around Three Writings whiskey. It was fair to say there is no way on earth that was on my bingo card when I was young. But life, and also, myself has obviously had a continual way of changing things and evolving things through life. So, it's an interesting just sort of point of reflection really about, when I left banking back in 2009 and decided to start building businesses, you go on a journey and you basically become, a term that took a while to embrace and understand, be an entrepreneur, which obviously now we all talk about the sort of phrase founder. They're synonymous with each other, but essentially, you can take yourself from where I started from banking, where I was doing a lot of mining related work, then sort of transitioning into what I did first, which was sort of doing that for myself outside of big businesses, then ultimately getting involved in the Woodsmith project, sort of an evolution of big mining, but that also got into fertilizer and got into things like soil health and all these sort of logical things. And then obviously during that time was, making cider at home, and then making vodka at home. And then sort of, naturally you could get into the idea that maybe that would then progress into a business and build a distillery from scratch. Creating a great vodka brand off the back of that makes sense. And then, potentially then the even bigger madness of then ending up in business with Ricky Gervais, making people laugh with our vodka and making people laugh with what we've created with that brand there. But genuinely never ever would have seen myself sitting here creating content. And I think that's part of recognizing just what you've got to do these days. There's no way I can outspend a Diageo or a Brown-Forman or any of the major, the Pernod Ricards, any of the major drink companies, in terms of launching Three Writings. So this came out of, a need to try and find a different way to get people involved in Three Writings, get people to effectively care enough about the brand through that they'll get out there, they'll talk about it, they'll defend it, they'll advocate for it, they'll buy it. And doing that is by basically trying to establish a level of trust in terms of being completely open, completely transparent, show you the warts and all, and get to understand the people. So obviously at the moment, I'm doing an awful lot of the work, but I'm not the only one. Liam, you've seen our head distiller and the team doing great work in distilling. And as we go through this journey, you're going to meet some more people. So today we've been out with the farmers and spending some time with Bevan from Thomas Fawcett Sons. So that'll come in the next piece where we just talk about what we've been doing here today. But you've got to look at sort of modern brands like Gymshark and other brands like Poppy and things where being open and telling the story and being, if you like, vulnerable and exposed about, being a person trying to do things which are really, really hard is, it's an interesting way to try and sort of give people more so they can understand a greater depth of what a product is. Because everyone, there's thousands and thousands of whiskies available in the world. And what we've got to do is find a way that people ultimately give a shit about Three Writings and care about it and want it. And so that's really the only edge and opportunity we've got. We're making, a great whiskey. We're focused on finding the best malt barley, the best malts, the brewing that Theakston's do to make the great beer, then the care that we put it through, then the cask that we put it in. We put it in an amazing bottle. But if no one's heard about it or knows anything about it, then that's just not there. So to add to that, really, it's about trying to be being real and being in public and being often. So, this is a totally different set of new skills from what I've developed over the years. and it's interesting. I think there's a lot of new lessons in terms of like sitting there and understanding how content works. When content doesn't work, you think something is a good idea, you publish it, and everyone's like, so what, don't care. And then every now and then you'll publish something and suddenly everyone's really interested in engaging and commenting on it. You don't quite sort of get it. So, I think, Three Writings, we started with the philosophy of getting the product right. Because like with Dutch Barn, there's creating awareness and getting people to try your product for the first time is really, really hard work. And you cannot disappoint them that when they get the liquid on their lips, it has to be good. So that's also an absolute, that's where the game starts. But then you've got to find ways of getting people to know all about it. So, I think when we're looking at community in terms of what we're trying to build, so we're starting with this idea here, Chris builds a whiskey. That goes against everything that's in my nature anyway. I'd much sooner it was about the team and the people. So hopefully what we'll get to do is show lots more people along the journey. And then over time, these channels will start to become ways in which you can understand the people behind Three Writings and get to understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, why they care, and all those sort of things. So, in doing that, it's a very, very long-term game. And in a world where basically your finger can go like that and swipe or swipe that way, depending on which apps you're using. And it's incredible to see how many people don't even make it to 3 seconds in content. And it's like the old saying about people have got attention span of goldfish. I mean, everyone's incredibly intelligent, but then ultimately you have that split moment to try and grab someone's attention so that they are willing to invest some of their valuable time into what you're doing. So sitting there just going, my whiskey's the best whiskey ever, we've done all these amazing things and it's great. To me, you just swipe right past that and go, okay, you're just trying to sell me something. So I think what we've got to try and do is build trust. We've got to build honesty, build openness, give you guys as much as you can in terms of people, information, access, some stuff that you maybe don't know about. We had a fascinating chat with Bevan and the farmers here about the barley and the challenges of farming and climate change, essentially, in terms of how it's just getting harder and harder to grow barley and to grow crops and to farm. And all of that translates into into costs, because ultimately everything has to be translated through to a product that ultimately gets purchased by people. So one of the things I'm trying to do is during this experience of Chris Builds a Whiskey is learn as fast as possible and try to get content that you all really like, you are willing to tell people about, you share it, you sit there and say, hey, this is great stuff. But ultimately, we're trying to build something that's super long term. And this week, I saw a bottle of a 30-year-old Morclock Midnight Malt that was for sale, and it just looked amazing. And it really sort of brought a smile to my face to think a 30-year release of Three Writings. I'll be about 80 for that. Hopefully, I have the privilege of being there for a release of a 30-year-old Three Writings. But it puts in context of to build that brand and have the right to basically be able to do a 30-year release, we have to get 3 seconds right. Because if I can't get 3 seconds right, you won't care, you won't watch, you won't become someone who loves Three Writings, and therefore we won't be around to make a 30-year release of Three Writings. What would I do differently? I would have started this habit a lot earlier and started learning a lot more. It was only 2 months or so ago that I had the idea to do this. I talked to the board and to shareholders and to Ricky about, I want to try this as a strategy to try and build a community around Three Writings. I wish I'd been focused on it before. I think we spent a reasonable amount of money making some absolute incredible documentary style videos on through ridings. And if you haven't seen them, you can see them. The links on are there on the Chris Builds a Whiskey YouTube page. There's a 4-part documentary where you can delve into high production, beautifully created videos and stories about through ridings, about each step, about the malting, about the brewing, about the distilling, and then ultimately it all coming together as a whiskey. Those things are great, and I do encourage you to check them out. They're like if you like, the finished product of the story. And Chris Builds a Whiskey is where you're right down in the dirt, like I'm sitting right now, is where you're going to learn a lot more. So, encourage you to check them out. Again, subscribe to the channels, follow them along, comment, get involved. If you don't like something I'm doing, please tell me. If you want to learn something more, or you're interested in another part of the story, or you want more detail, again, tell me, and then we can make it happen. So what's up next is, as I mentioned earlier, Made in Yorkshire is coming up next. So on the farm today, it's highly mechanised. There's a tractor and a combine, and in the end, essentially, we're just watching that go around. But we had some good time chatting about barley and about the challenges and different varieties and different things that those do. Next stop is the maltings, which we're doing next week, I think it is, and then on from there into the brewery at Theakston. So that content will be coming, and then I'm back out interviewing a few more founders in the coming weeks, which hopefully will bring to you soon. But anyway, please, as I mentioned earlier, please follow along, and hope you enjoy what you're seeing. Thanks very much.